Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Thursdays with Tracy. Um, I'm glad to. Right now, I'm just the only one in, but I did want to talk about um, just one subject today, and I'm waiting for my person to get in. So I may look on my phone a little bit to see if he's in yet. I'm going to exclusively talk about the Medicare for All March that is taking place. So I'm checking my phone now to see is the person in here yet. So just please, um, pardon me. So we're gonna just do this really quickly and get this all started. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I'm just waiting for him to come here. So it'll be just a second. I'm gonna flip my screen here in just a moment. Let's see. I'm just waiting to log in and see if he's coming. And I'm also using. Hi, Joy. How are you? We're waiting on our guests. I think Joy, this is your first time in, isn't it? Okay. Can't even validate it. Boo. So we're gonna flip. I'm gonna flip my screen here for a second and contact my guest. So it'll be just a moment, everybody. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah, that's right. Joy is a first time viewer. Welcome, Joy. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Like I said, we have a guest on that's supposed to be on here in just a few moments. He's for the Medicare for All March. And again, I'm going to exclusively talk about that today. So I'm getting my phone up just so I can get all the information straight in my head. And so I found out about the Medicare for All March last week. If you all don't know the story, I'll quickly tell it. I had tried to get a group together myself to do a march. Of course, I don't have the organizational skills to organize something for that. So when I learned about this march going on, I knew one, I had to join the group. And second, I would want someone to come on to talk about what it's, what's what the protest entails. Again, I'm going to cut out here for a second and check on my guest. Okay. Okay, not yet. So, like I said, I'm trying. Oh, there he is. So I'm going to bring on Joe, and Joe and I are going to have a nice conversation about the Medicare for All March. Okay, let me add him in here. Hello, sir. How are you?
Tracy, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm glad you could make it today.
Happy to be here.
I wanted to give the audience, I was trying not to get too detailed because I tend to ramble. So I wanted you to give a kind of a background about where, I know why the march started, but when did the planning start?
Well, first of all, Tracy, thank you for having me on tonight. I appreciate your time. And you know what? I'm going to put my earbuds in. I'm getting a bit of an echo. I don't know if you can hear the echo. But let me do this just to be safe. There should be an echo.
And I can hear.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
You're echoing just a little bit.
I figured that.
Just a little bit.
Okay, this should be better now.
Okay, it's a little better.
All right, good. All right, let me try. Let me turn down just a little bit more.
Yeah, you might want.
All right, how are we sounding now?
Better.
All right, good. Okay, yeah. The Medicare for All marches, the entire setup and everything. It began about, I would say January. It was really an extension of the Force the Vote protest that took place on June, not June, but January 3 and January 4 in Washington, D.C. there were about 35 or 40 of us that were marching around to make sure that the progressives in the House made sure to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi, so she could have a floor vote for Medicare for all on the floor of the House of Representatives. And unfortunately, none of the progressive members of the House of Representatives did what they were supposed to do, which was withhold their vote. None of them did that. So basically, the planning for having these protests, these marches in 52 cities across the United States was really an extension of what happened with forced vote in the beginning of this year. So we're talking about 7.5 months ago. And originally, the first march was just going to be Washington, D.C. There weren't going to be any of the marches. And then other cities decided to get involved with being active with fighting for Medicare for all. And we had other people in Seattle, Yellow Vest Seattle decided to get involved. A bunch of really powerful organizers in Los Angeles started to get involved. And then one city became 3 cities. 3 cities became 6 or 7. 7 became 12. 12 became 20. 20 became 30. 30 became 40. 40 became 50. And now we're at 52 cities across the country. This Saturday, we're going as far east as Washington, D.C. We're going as far west as Honolulu, Hawaii. There's a march taking place out there also. So the reason why we're doing these marches across the country is because we understand that healthcare is a human right. Medicare for all is the demand. It is no longer something that we're trying to achieve by political means. We've tried that. We tried that in January with Force the Vote. Bernie Sanders tried to pass his health care plan. Jamila Jayapal was trying to get her bill plan passed. And we've had plenty of politicians across in the United States over the past 2 or 3 dozen years that have tried to pass some sort of health care legislation or tried to promise Medicare for all. And none of these politicians have delivered for the American people. None of these politicians have delivered for their constituents. So at this point, we have to be in the streets and demanding Medicare for all. And that's the reason for this Saturday.
Not to cut you off, I didn't mean to do that, but
No,
I do want to backstep because if you've watched my other podcast, you know I was not a big old fan of Force the Vote. And I'll tell you why.
Tell me why.
One, Jimmy Dore. I cannot. I will not. But that wasn't the main. I didn't see what was the plan after that. Okay, you withhold her vote. What happens after that? So I didn't see this march seems to be more planned. Like there's something that's going to happen after the marches. Whereas the force the vote, it was like, okay, we forced the vote. She still gets in, or someone else gets in. I didn't quite see the end game on the force the vote.
Okay, and I can understand why people would think that and feel that way. I thought, personally, if we had politicians that actually served the people, Jimmy Dore would have never needed to come up with a forced vote strategy. He would have never needed to do that. And if we had politicians that were actually doing their jobs and campaign, and politicians, the staffers for the politicians that actually knew how politics and American government worked, they would have come up with forced the vote long before Jimmy Dore did. So the fact that a nightclub comedian, or as Jimmy calls himself, a jag-off nightclub comedian, came up with this strategy and outflanked every single politician in Washington, all 538 members of Congress. That should tell you how ineffective and how useless Congress actually is. When a nightclub comedian can outthink all of the staffers, everybody involved in Washington, D.C., and he outthought all of them, and he came up with this strategy. And I thought the strategy was effective for what it was supposed to do, which was to force the progressives into withholding their vote for Nancy Pelosi to keep her speakership of the House of Representatives. And unfortunately, all the members of the House of Representatives, all the progressives caved. None of them did anything. None of them actually did what they said they were going to do for the people. So at that point, there wasn't anything that we could have done after forced the vote because none of the progressives withheld their votes. None of them did what they were supposed to do for their constituents. And at that point, we were left to our own devices. And our own devices now is the culmination of what's going to happen in 2 days on July 24 across the country.
Thank you for explaining that to me, because I just couldn't get it in my head. I'm like, okay, I'm missing something. I'm missing something. I'm missing something. And I wanted to talk about like the promotion of it. Like I said, I literally just learned about this march on Monday.
Okay.
My city is not having a march.
Which city is your city?
I'm Indianapolis.
Indianapolis, okay.
We're not having one. Closest one to me would have been Chicago, but of course, learning about it Monday, I didn't have time to shift my schedule to make it to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens to a person like, oh, I just learned about this, I'm going to miss the protest? What else is it that they can do afterwards? Like after Saturday, what is it that they can do?
Okay, there's plenty of things you can do, Tracy. And I'm sorry you weren't able to reach one of the marches around the country. Moreover, I'm disappointed that there's not anything happening in Indianapolis, but maybe the next time you do any of these things, we'll have something in Indianapolis. But the best way to show support, if you cannot attend one of the marches, is to either donate. You can visit the website at m4all.org. You can also share all of the messages, share all of the content on Twitter and on Instagram, on the March for Medicare for All Facebook page. You can buy some merchandise from the website. There's t-shirts, there's flags, there's banners, masks, buttons, bumper stickers. So there's plenty of merchandise that you can purchase that will not only show your support for Medicare for All, but quite honestly help fund this movement. Because we're not receiving any money from any corporate entities. We're not receiving any sort of funding from any nonprofits. We're not receiving any sort of donations from any corporations or any politicians or any wealthy benefactors. This is grassroots as it gets. There's no astroturf here. You understand what I'm saying, Tracy? There's no astroturf here. This is grassroots. This is sod. This is dirt. This is boots on the ground and hands in the dirt. All right? And this is real people from across the country that have real stories, that care about Medicare for All. They care about doing something bigger for themselves. They care about their neighbor. They care about their friends. They care about their significant others. They care about their families. And that's why we're out in the streets this Saturday. So again, if you can't attend the march right away, and you don't have the time to get to a particular location, visit the website, support the cause financially. You can share the messages. You can have we're streaming a lot of these marches in a lot of these cities through the Medicare for All website, the March for Medicare for All website. You can share the marches, share the videos from the marches, buy some merchandise, donate. This is not a one-time occurrence. It's what's going to happen on July 24th. This is not a one-time occurrence. This is not a one-off. This can't be a one-off because we have too much momentum and too many people that are interested and invested in this cause. And this cause and this movement is bigger than just July 24. It's bigger than what happened on July 3 and July 4 and July 5th in Washington, D.C. This is a movement that's going to be sustainable. It's going to be persistent, and we will not stop until we get Medicare for All.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because I thought, sometimes I'm guilty of coming up with grand ideas because there's nobody that stops me from saying, you know what, you may want to rethink that. But I'm ready to pressure some people in Indianapolis to be like, okay, hey guys, let's get our act together. Because our city is so impacted by the lack of healthcare, especially during the pandemic. And that's what is bringing up my next question. So as we both know, I call him y'all's president because he's not mine. I can't get to call him Biden president. It leaves kind of like a bitter taste in my mouth. That he's came out specifically and says that if Medicare for All gets to his desk, he vetoes it. One, what is he thinking? And then I know he's thinking it because of the corporate donors. So I'd like you to talk about a little bit, if you could, the influence that some of these corporations are having on our politicians, because it's just literally gotten out of hand.
Yeah, well, a couple of things with that. Number one, Joe Biden, before he became president back in 2019, he had a conversation. Actually, I think it was a meeting with a bunch of wealthy Wall Street tycoons, and he said nothing will fundamentally change. He said that. He said, I think it was at either Goldman Sachs or it was at JP Morgan, somewhere. It was somewhere on Wall Street with a lot of money. He said nothing will fundamentally change. And the one promise that he's kept is just that. Nothing will fundamentally change. And 13 years ago, we had Barack Obama walk onto the political stage and say, hope, change, and yes, we can. Okay? And what did we got? What did we get? We got continuation. We got more of the same. We got, most people don't understand where the healthcare plan, the current healthcare plan in the United States came from. It came from Mitt Romney's MassCare.
Yeah.
And Mitt Romney's MassCare was the brainchild of a right-wing think tank called the Heritage Foundation. So when Mitt Romney and Barack Obama were competing, and I'm using that word purposely, competing to be president of the United States, it wouldn't have mattered which president who was elected in 2008, because whether it was Obama or Romney, the healthcare plan that we have now is the healthcare plan that was going to get passed regardless of who was going to win that presidency. The only difference is the way that we call the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. We call it Obamacare, but if Romney had been elected, it would have been called Romneycare. It wouldn't have made a difference. And so when the Affordable Care Act is a corporate giveaway. It's a giveaway to health insurance companies. It's a giveaway to the health insurance industry. It's a giveaway to Big Pharma. And one thing that happened, and just to get, not to get too deep into policy, but I think it's important to discuss this. Excuse me. The Affordable Care Act is based on what's called a three-legged stool model in healthcare. The three legs of the stool are access to insurance, a government subsidies, and a fancy rule called the individual mandate. Now, the other two parts you don't really need to focus on those. But the third rule is most important, the individual mandate. The individual mandate is what forced people to buy health insurance. And if you did not buy health insurance, the Internal Revenue Service issued a penalty to you for not buying health insurance. It was either a $695 penalty for an individual or a $2,000 penalty for a family. So what happened with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 that Donald Trump passed, what he did, he reduced the individual mandate penalty to $0. So what happened after that? The insurance rates for young, healthy people increased because young, healthy people, before the penalty was basically reduced to $0, were forced to buy into the system. And because you had more people buying into the system, the rates were lower. But you still didn't have universal coverage for everybody because there were still millions of people that weren't eligible to sign on to Obamacare. It just wasn't happening.
Absolutely.
So what ended up happening is you had young healthy people that were no longer interested in buying health insurance once the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 was passed. So young healthy people don't have to buy health insurance now. So now young healthy people that want to buy insurance have to pay more for the insurance. And then people that were already paying more, people with chronic conditions or older people or sick people that were just about to get onto Medicare but weren't at that age yet, their insurance rates went through the roof. So now insurance companies saw this coming. So what they did is they increased the premiums even more on top of that, and then they reduced coverages, and then they increased the deductibles. So you now have what's called in the United States junk insurance, where essentially you're paying $400 a month and you're not really getting covered for anything.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna because I forgot my headphones, I'm gonna go get them for a second. So I'm gonna just take a little dip for like 5 seconds here. And let's see. I was waiting on someone else to join here. Let's see. And audience, I'm disappearing. So and I gotta get up because I surely forgot it. I cannot believe I did that. Okay, audience, I'm coming back. It'll be just a second.
Okay. Still up there.
I wanted to talk about if I can get to the right screen. I wanted to talk about can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to talk about what happens after the 24th. What, you're going to go to the protest, you're going to have speakers, but
Right.
What happens? What actually happens after the protest?
There's a couple of strategies that we're looking to employ after July 24th. One of them is to have a letter sent to all of the politicians in Washington, D.C. and all the governors across the United States. The next step that we're looking to do, and I know one of the main organizers and I discussed this in a phone call a couple of days ago, is to file a formal complaint with the United Nations in New York City. Because right now, our human rights are being violated. Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights dictates that we are supposed to be having health care and medical care as simply on the basis of us being human beings. And Tracy, can you hear me?
I absolutely can hear you.
Okay, I can't hear you, but I can't hear myself, so that's perfectly fine. So the echo is gone, which is good. Thank you. So what we're supposed to be doing is, again, healthcare is a human right as prescribed by Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So what we're going to do, our next step is to file a formal complaint with the United Nations. Because what's happening right now with the United States government not giving every single American citizen healthcare is a violation of our human rights. And something that I've spoken about on my podcast and on my conversations that I've had with various people across the internet, web space, etc., is about internationalizing the struggle. And I firmly believe that we must continue to internationalize the struggle in order for every single American to have healthcare. And the best way to internationalize the struggle is to take a formal complaint against the United States government to the United Nations. We must have international solidarity with respect to this Medicare for All movement. And the best way to create international solidarity is to file that formal complaint with the United Nations. Now, I know there are plenty of formal steps that we must undertake in order to file that formal complaint with the United Nations with respect to our human rights being violated based upon Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But that is our next step, because as I said about 21 minutes ago, we can no longer pursue this movement through political means. We've tried that. We tried that in January. We've had politicians promise this to us, and none of them have delivered. So the next step is internationalizing the struggle and internationalizing the plea and the call for Medicare for all across the United States.
That's a great answer. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Loud and clear. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so another question I have is,
yes, ma'am.
What about the people who always say, this is too much? No, wait a minute, let me backtrack. I'm going to renege that question, and then I'll ask it a little bit later.
No problem.
People who put out completely false statements about Medicare for all.
Sure.
Things like, because when I think of Medicare, I always think of something that people pay into, because you have Part A, and you have Part B, etc. But, that's why I always say Medicaid for all, because it's easier for me to think about, oh, that's free, so there you go. But what about the people that say, if we get this system, you're going to lose your doctors, which we both know that's
not true.
Not true at all. But how? I guess my question is, how do you talk to people who are completely opposed to Medicare for all? And if you do, what is it that you say to them?
Mm-hmm. Well, Tracy, it's as simple as this. Right now, there are places across the country where we can get COVID-19 vaccines. Across the country. I could go, and again, I live in North Carolina. You're in Indianapolis. I don't think Indianapolis has Harris Teeter grocery stores. I don't think they do. There are Harris Teeter grocery stores all around where I live in North Carolina. If I wanted to walk into a Harris Teeter grocery store in North Carolina and get a COVID-19 vaccine, I could easily do it. And in most cases, it's free. There are places, and again, I live around Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And there's a very good medical school there. University of North Carolina is right around the corner from where I live. There are plenty of biotech and other medical facilities that are offering the COVID-19 jab for free. There are plenty of other places where I could, if I wanted to go to the Orange County Health Center and ask about getting a COVID-19 vaccine, I could do it, and they would pay for it. So whenever somebody says that, oh, we can't have Medicare for all, go ahead and ask them where they got their vaccine from, and ask them if they got it for free. And if they got it for free, there's your Medicare for all. There it is.
Absolutely.
There it is. And if the government can provide vaccinations for everybody, and not just for COVID-19, but in the past for mumps, measles, rubella, polio, etc. If the government can do that in terms of vaccinations, then why can't the government do this for diabetes? Why can't the government do this for cancer? Why can't the government do this? Why are we the only country in the world that has to have different insurance for different parts of our body? Because our medical insurance doesn't cover our teeth, nor does it cover our eyes. And if you want coverage for your eyes or your teeth, you have to pay extra for that. It's separate coverages that are not part of a current healthcare plan. We're the only country in the world that doesn't have a single payer healthcare system. And with respect to that, we have to pay extra for different parts of our bodies to be covered, which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. So again, when people come up with these false narratives saying, oh, it costs too much, well, wait a minute, then where did we find $740 billion to fund the military? When a Medicare for all would save $450 billion a year. But we can find money to bomb other people in other countries. We can find money for that. We find money to consistently fund the police. But we can't find money to have health care for everybody in America?
Or we can find money to bail out corporations. And none of those politicians that object, I have never heard a politician, when it comes to funding wars, ask, where's the money coming from? I've never heard it. Now, maybe you have. I have never heard a politician ever say, you know what? We should cut military spending.
No, they're not going to ask that, because military spending does let me rephrase this. Healthcare makes certain people money. But if you go ahead and give it away for free, it doesn't make other wealthy oligarchs money. It doesn't make the wealthy elite, the ruling class money, which is why you have to charge for it, which is why people like you and me are paying hundreds of dollars a month for it, which is why prices for particular medical treatments are exorbitantly more expensive in the United States than in other countries. This is why certain medical supplies in America cost more than in other countries. This is why if you go to a hospital, it's entirely possible that a tongue depressor, a cardboard stick, would cost you $25. And I said this in an interview a couple of weeks ago. A tongue depressor is a popsicle stick minus the popsicle.
Exactly.
And they charge you next to nothing for a tongue depressor. But a hospital is going to charge you $25 or maybe $30 for it. A hospital might charge you $15 for 2 Tylenol, when you could buy a bottle of Tylenol at your local drugstore for $6 or $7. So again, what we have in the United States is not a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. And this healthcare plan in the United States, it's not designed to help people stay healthy and get better. It's designed to make sure that people remain sick, so those who are sick become dependent upon our healthcare system.
Exactly. Oh, I wish I had you here in Indianapolis to tell all of my family. I get so many arguments about this, and I'm like, listen, did you get a stimulus check? Yes. Did you return the stimulus check? No. That's socialism. That's the whole definition. Well, I'll just leave. Okay, so you realize when you leave the United States, you're probably going to be going to a country with socialized medical care, right? Because I think the like you said, United States is the only industrialized country that does not have it, unless you're trying to live in, like, I don't know, Libya or someplace I've never heard of. But
and real quick, Libya, before Gaddafi was killed by the United States government, Libya had healthcare for everybody.
Oh yeah,
Libya had healthcare for everybody.
Exactly.
Okay, and Tracy, a little more about me, including the United States. And again, it says in my handle, Joe Nice DJ, so that's how people know who I am. But I also have 2 master's degrees. I have a master's degree in nonprofit management from the University of Baltimore. I also have a master's degree in intercultural services and healthcare from Wake Forest University. So I understand the Affordable Care Act and the architecture of the United States healthcare system a bit more than most people that are on YouTube talking about Medicare for All right now. And according to every 10 years, the World Health Organization has what's called a health efficiency survey. A health efficiency survey. The United States ranked 37th, according to the last time that the World Health Organization did this health efficiency survey. The United States ranked 37th. France was number 1. And if you know anything about the history of French medicine, it makes perfect sense that France will be number 1. The French healthcare system is excellent. And take a look at some of the famous French doctors that have made legendary advancements in medical care. For example, when you buy a gallon of milk, it says that word pasteurization on it. Okay, the doctor that created pasteurization is a doctor named Louis Pasteur. He is a French doctor who created the infrastructure for sterilization of hospital tools. That's Louis Pasteur. Another French doctor is the gentleman that created a form of intersemiotic communication. The gentleman's name is Louis Braille. He is a French doctor. The gentleman that was responsible for a form of capital punishment by beheading, Dr. Joseph Guillotin, who was involved with creating the guillotine, another French doctor. So there are plenty of French doctors that created lots of advancements in the diaspora of medical care, which makes sense that the French healthcare system would be the best in the world. And their taxes are quite high. So you go to, again, I've been to 48 countries. I think nearly every country that I've been to, including the United States, has a healthcare plan that's sponsored by the government, or they have some form of what's called universal healthcare, or they have what's called a single payer model of healthcare. So again, the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't have a single payer healthcare model for everybody. Yet there are different aspects of the other healthcare models that are present in the United States, but none of them are being implemented for everybody across the country. For example, the United States, when people say, oh, well, I don't want socialized medicine. I don't want socialized medicine in this country. I don't want to be like, well, you know what? The United States has socialized medicine. Take a look at the Veterans Administration. The VA is a perfect example of socialized medicine. Socialized medicine happens when the federal government owns the hospitals, and they also the employees that work at the hospital, from the janitors to the phlebotomists to the security personnel to anesthesiologists to surgeons. They are all federal employees. They are all government employees. That is socialized medicine. And there are plenty of countries around the world that employ that strategy, and their citizens are happy with the care that they receive. There are plenty of countries that have a single-payer healthcare system. A perfect example is the country of my birth, England. England has the National Health Service. The NHS is essentially Medicare for all. It works a bit differently, but for the most part, it is a single-payer healthcare system. There are plenty of countries, for example, like Germany and or Sweden, that have what's called a universal healthcare system, where you pay into the system, but you are provided with basic services either through public-private partnerships or through nonprofit organizations that provide your healthcare. So there are plenty of ways to structure healthcare for everybody for the United States. The easiest and most expedient way to do this would be Medicare for all. But none of our politicians are interested in pursuing these opportunities and these options because they are bought and paid for by the healthcare insurance industries, the lobbies, the big pharmaceutical industries, etc. They're bought and sold, and they're bought, sold, and leased. So again, like I said 7 minutes ago, and I said in the beginning of this conversation, again, thank you, Tracy, for having me on tonight. Again, we must continue to internationalize the struggle, and we cannot pursue Medicare for all by mere political means, because politics is the reason we got what we have in the first place. And Albert Einstein years ago said we can't solve problems by using the same solutions that created the problems in the first place. So we can't fix the problems politically when politics got us the problem that we have, which is this rapacious healthcare system that we have in the United States right now.
Yeah, I got just two more questions because I took way too much of your time. I'm like,
no, I got all the time in the world for you.
Okay,
sister. Anytime you want.
So, I have another question that I've always hypothesized this. So let's just say, in my perfect world, we get Medicare for all. Mm-hmm. We get it. Somehow somebody wakes Joe Biden up and he says, okay, we're going to do it. What is to stop a company like Anthem or Cigna or Humana from keeping this in the courts to stop?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. But what I think needs to happen is if we're going to have Medicare, this has to be a situation. And again, you mentioned this earlier when you talked about Medicare. Medicare is Part A and Part B. Medicare Part A is inpatient hospital coverage. Medicare Part B is outpatient medical coverage. There's also Medicare Part C, which is the Medicare Advantage. Well, if we're going to talk about Medicare for all, this cannot be Medicare Part C as Medicare for all. This needs to be Medicare Parts A, B, and of course Medicare Part D, which is prescription drug coverage. And it also must be expanded to include vision, dental, and long-term care. And part of that long-term care includes mental health. So the health insurance industries, the Cignas, Aetnas, Anthems, etc., they by default, if Medicare for all gets passed, would become redundant. They would become redundant. They would be, to borrow a British phrase, a surplus to requirements, because you wouldn't need them anymore. What do you need a private insurance company for when the government is doing everything that the private insurance companies are doing for profit, and quite honestly, that the government should have been doing anyway? So if Medicare for all gets passed, and I'm not saying if, because I believe it will one of these days, when it gets passed, health insurance companies will be null and void and no longer useful or have any sort of purpose. At that point, the government could do this. The government could hire the people that worked at these organizations to become part of the new federal government healthcare system, because naturally it's going to have to expand. And you're going to need more people who understand how health insurance and the health industry works in order to administer the healthcare plan of the United States. So hiring plenty of the people that work at these healthcare organizations is certainly an option. And it might be an excellent option to make sure that we don't have mass unemployment within the health insurance industry. But in terms of executives making hundreds of millions of dollars simply because they feel like charging people exorbitant rates for deductibles, those days have to end. Let's think about this. The former governor of Florida, who's now a state senator, Rick Scott. Rick Scott is one of the wealthiest members of Congress. He has a net worth pushing $250 million. He is a centimillionaire. $250 million his net worth is. He made that money being a president of a health insurance company. That's how he made his money. So again, the whole idea of healthcare organizations trying to sue when Medicare for all gets passed, they can sue all they want. That's fine. They're going to be redundant. They're going to be defunct. They're going to be non-existent. They will be extinct. They're going to have to be, because there's no need for a health insurance company when we have Medicare for all and the government is
Well,
the health insurance company. The
there
government is
yeah.
the health. The
There
government is.
there is one way they could stay around, and I'll propose this.
Okay.
They could plastic surgery, and I'm talking about to improve your fit, not like breast reconstructive surgery. That's medical. But if you want a breast augmentation, if you want plastic surgery, or some weird type of surgery that you want, then I can see a need for it.
Well, and see, and therein lies with Medicare for all, what the kind of healthcare system that you're referring to is essentially a public option, where,
Oh
and
yeah,
again,
that's true.
this is part of what the NHS also has in England. If you want to use the NHS, which is the government's healthcare system, and you go to a government managed hospital where the nurses and doctors and nurse practitioners and licensed nurse practitioners and nurses assistants and healthcare aides, etc. They're all employees of the British government, which is also a part of the National Health Service. If you wanted to use the NHS, fine. But if you wanted to go to a private hospital and pay for that out of pocket, that is your option, thus the public option. There is a magnificent private hospital in London, in the West, I think it's like in the West End of London, called the Lister Hospital. And you're probably like, well, damn, Lister. That name sounds familiar. Why did that sound familiar? It should sound familiar. If you've ever used Listerine, it was created by a doctor named Dr. Joseph Lister, who was a British doctor. And he created the solution to sterilize surgical tools in the operating room. He then figured out that the solution that he created was also good for oral health. So he decided to put a little flavoring in it and change the colors here and there and call it Listerine. The Joseph Lister Hospital is a private hospital in London, England. And again, if you wanted to go to the Joseph Lister Hospital and you wanted to pay out of pocket for that, you can do that. But one of my cousins works at the King George Hospital in England. He's a critical care nurse in London, England, on the east side, in Ilford, which is east of London. They're a government hospital. They're part of the NHS. If you wanted to go there and get your health care, you can go there too. So again, the public option, which is what Barack Obama promised us. He promised healthcare for everybody. Then healthcare for everybody became, a public option. Then the public option became Obamacare, which is known as the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Now this three-legged stool model that we have, one of the legs is gone because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which essentially cut one of the legs of the three-leg stool model out. So now essentially what we have is junk insurance and a whole lot of people that don't have health insurance now because many people lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic.
Exactly. But, I've always talked about on my podcast that I never believed Obama wanted health care for all.
No.
And the reason I say that, and people are like, how did you say that? His hands were tied. His hands were not tied those first 2 years. You had a Democratic House. You had a Democratic Senate. You had a Democratic Supreme Court. You could have easily passed Medicare for all.
And on top of that, Tracy, he had a filibuster-proof Senate.
Absolutely.
He had 60 people in the Senate.
And I wish people, particularly people of color, would just wake up like, no, it's never for us. And that's why I asked that question about, the anthems and the sickness and the Uniteds, because I can't just see them sitting around thinking, okay, it's over. I just can't see them with the millions and billions of dollars that they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
Just sitting there and just saying, okay, we're not relevant anymore. Let's just pick up. I can't see it. And I would hope that, once we get it, because like you, I do believe we get it. I just think that's a valid question is, yes, we can hire those people, but do you really think they're going to just go away? I think they're going to stick around and make it hard. That's just me. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I want to be wrong so badly.
You know what? I want you to be wrong too, because I need Medicare for all. There's no purpose for these health insurance companies. None. Especially now when they're offering you less, they're charging you more, and they're denying you your claims on a more consistent basis.
Absolutely.
There's no purpose for them. There's no reason for them. And with respect to the love affair that Black people have for Barack Obama, still to this day, Barack Obama was more interested in making sure that Hillary Clinton got into the White House than he was about making sure that black people weren't getting shot and killed in the streets by racist white police officers. He was more concerned with that. He certainly was. Because again, years before, during the Rodney King era, etc., the conversation, the narrative was, we don't have anybody that looks like us in positions of power that can affect change. We don't have anybody that looks like us that could really move the needle in terms of legislation to protect black people from racist white police officers. We don't have anybody that can do that. So then, wait a minute, we end up with a black president, and we end up with not one black attorney general, but two of them during Obama's tenure. We had Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch. We also had a black head of Homeland Security and Jay Johnson. And what did we get? Dozens and actually hundreds of black people getting killed by racist white police officers. So I don't understand the love affair that black people had with Barack Obama when Barack Obama wasn't truly interested in ever helping black people. When Barack Obama had an opportunity to fix the pipes in Flint, Michigan, he took a fake sip of water from a water bottle and turned his back on every single person in Flint, Michigan. He had an opportunity to do something about lead paint and lead poisoning in Baltimore, Maryland. He had an opportunity to do something about the water quality in Athens, Georgia. He had an opportunity to do something about poor soil quality in migrant communities in California and Florida. He had an opportunity to do something about these situations, and he chose to do nothing. He chose to do nothing. So again, I don't understand the love affair that black people have with Barack Obama because again, Barack Obama was not for black people. He didn't care about black people. He wasn't interested in helping black people. When he said, "Oh yeah, I'm your president," he was the president for corporate America. That's who he was a president for. Let's not forget that his cabinet came from Michael Froman. Michael Froman was an executive at Citicorp. And if you go through the Podesta emails, you can see the list of people that he suggested that Barack Obama hired to particular cabinet positions. And if you could go through the list of that email that Michael Froman, a former executive at Citigroup, had, almost every person that he suggested eventually became involved in Barack Obama's cabinet during the first term or second term or both terms.
And it still continues. And that's the sad part about it. It's like, people can't see there's the forest, but you're missing it because you're focused. It's like the answer is right there. But I want to ask, this is my last question to you because, again, I'm taking up so much of your time. I'm like, I want to ask this. I want to ask this.
Okay.
So I finally joined the group. Like I said, I joined on Tuesday, the Medicare for All group.
Thank you.
I've noticed a criticism of the progressives. And I want to know your thought on that because, and particularly the squad, because all of them have ran on Medicare for All.
Of course.
What happened? It's like, okay, why are we not talking about this? Why is it that if one Joe Manchin can make us think about something, and he's just one person, you're telling me it's 11 of you all, and you can't do anything?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like you to kind of talk about that because, in theory, I support what they're doing, but then I'm like, okay, where's that action? And I think we need action. No, I know we need action.
Agreed, Tracy. And again, thank you for your time this evening, and thank you for the invitation to your channel. And I'm honored that you think enough of me to have me on your platform and in your space. I have no faith in the squad at all. I have no faith in the squad at all. Moreover, I have no faith in the progressive movement in Washington, D.C. Because how many progressives are there in Washington, D.C.? If any of these progressives or any members of the squad were truly interested in Medicare for All, we would have, if any of them were truly interested in Medicare for All, I would not be a guest speaker at the march in Washington, D.C. You know why? Because you would have 11 members of the squad lining up to be speaking at the Medicare for All march in Washington, D.C., or whatever state they're representing.
That's a good point.
Okay?
Exactly.
Not a single member of the squad is attending any of the marches that are taking place across the country. And there are 52 marches. and there's 11 members of the squad, as you said, 11 members, 52 marches, 11 members of the squad, and not one of them is attending any of the marches. In fact, people like Nina Turner are having their own events on the same day as the Medicare for All march. So tell me, how are any of members of the House of Representatives or anybody in the squad actually progressive when none of them have voiced their support for the marches for Medicare for All? None of them have decided to donate any of their time or their resources or their political clout to supporting the marches across the country. We've asked many of them to come out and attend or at least show some sort of support, whether it's a tweet, whether it's a retweet, whether it's a post on Instagram, whether it's a conversation with one of the organizers on one of their social media accounts or one of their podcasts. We've received nothing from anybody from the squad. Nothing. So again, I have no faith in the squad. None. And again, since you mentioned Black people, you mentioned Barack Obama, and you mentioned, I'm going to go ahead and call out the Congressional Black Caucus. Because there are plenty of members of the Congressional Black Caucus that said, yeah, Medicare for all. We want health care for everybody. Where are they? Jim Clyburn accepts more money from the pharmaceutical industry than any member of Congress. And he's the third highest ranking Democrat in Congress right now. Where is he for Medicare for all?
Well, actually, he's against it. He actually literally has came out against it. And his reasoning, don't hit me because I'm just reporting the news, is because he falls into that false narrative of you'll lose your doctor, it's too radical. And we know why, because Big Pharma is contributing to his pockets. We know that's why.
Close to $300,000 a year.
Yes.
From Big Pharma and the healthcare insurance lobbies.
Absolutely.
So again, where's the Congressional Black Caucus with respect to this? Where are they? Where is the squad? Where is Pramila Jayapal, who is the leader of the Progressive Caucus? Where is she? Where is AOC? If she puts out a tweet to her 13 million followers on Twitter saying, go to the march in Washington, D.C., support the Medicare for All march in Washington, D.C., or where she is in New York, go to the march in New York City, show up and show out. We need Medicare for all, because that's what she ran on when she defeated Joe Crowley all those years ago. She said Medicare for all. She campaigned on that. Now all of a sudden it's, I'm nowhere to be seen for Medicare for all. The hell with the squad. The hell with the progressives. This is now past the means of political operation to try to get Medicare for all for everybody, to try to live up to the ideals of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article number 25. And the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was written on December 10, 1948. And it says in Article 25, medical care. And we don't have it for everybody in this country. So again, when we talk about political means, Democrat and Republican, and again, I can only speak about the Washington, D.C. march because that's the march that I will be attending and I will be participating in, and that's the march I will be one of the guest speakers at. Okay? Healthcare in the United States should never be politicized in the first place. Because again, Republicans agree a lot. The overwhelming majority of Republicans agree with it. Democrats agree with it. And I know loads of independents agree with it. And plenty of people who are Green Party members agree with it. And take a look at the cast of characters of guest speakers that we have on the panel. We have Dr. Joe Jarvis, who is a doctor and a Medicare for All proponent. He is a Republican. We also have Dr. Margaret Flowers, and right now I am in Baltimore, Maryland, visiting my parents. We have Dr. Margaret Flowers. Dr. Margaret Flowers was the gubernatorial candidate for the Green Party in Maryland back, I think, in 2010, if I'm not mistaken. So in terms of political ideology, or what we call the Overton window, far left and far right, we have a Republican, Joe Jarvis, that's for Medicare for All. And the diametric opposite politically in Dr. Margaret Flowers, a member of the Green Party that supports Medicare for All. And they are both speaking at the panel in Washington, D.C. this Saturday. So again, if we can have a Republican who's not necessarily far right Trump Republican, but a Republican nonetheless, and then we can have a member of the Green Party who would be further to the left than Bernie Sanders, who would essentially be Dr. Jill Stein and Jamu Baraka back in 2016, and Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker in 2020. the Green Party, and she's for Medicare for all. What's the excuse for the 538 members of Congress? What's their excuse?
Exactly. That you were asking a great question. I wanted to well, first of all, I gotta have you back some kind of way. I gotta figure this out because this is what you get. You don't even know that in our podcast on Saturday, the other one I do called the Progressive Queens, we're doing a segment about is it time to give up on the squad?
It's big time to give up on the squad.
I understand.
It's big time to give up on them.
So I was thinking, boy, if he were just female, because I don't have any males on the Progressive Queens, it's just us ladies. But wow, somehow I've got to connect with you and the rest of the group because, like I said, I definitely think we're going to need to make a whole lot more noise. Like I said, I literally just found out about this Monday. I wish I had known about this a while ago, but like I said, I'm going to put it on my website and things like that. But last question, what is it that you hope that people, people are showing up because they want Medicare for all.
Yes, ma'am.
But if people could do one thing besides going to the protests, what would you tell that person to do?
Donate. We need funding. Again, we are not receiving any money from any corporate entities. We're not receiving any money from any wealthy benefactors. We're not receiving any money from any politicians. Hell, we're not even receiving any social media support or any backing from any politicians. So what makes anybody think that politicians are giving us money? If anything, we need donations to continue to fund this movement. We also need boots on the ground. So again, the power is with the people. We are the people. We are the heroes that we have been waiting for this entire time. And our heroes are not the 538 members of Congress. They are not the members of the squad. They are not the members of the progressives. They are not the Congressional Black Caucus. There's nobody in Washington, D.C. that has our best interests in mind. We take care of us. We are our care. We are our mutual aid. We take care of us. And the only way we are going to get what we want is to be in the streets. And something that I have been a proponent of and a supporter of in the early days is the Gilets jaunes movement, the Yellow Vest movement. In France. I'm a big supporter of that. It's for making sure that the workers of France get their rights afforded. And when people in France don't get what they want, people are in the streets shutting everything down. There were over 100,000 people in Paris, France last week in protest of the vaccine rollouts and the vaccine measures to make sure that everybody has a vaccine passport in order to get into certain areas and to participate in other areas of society. And 100,000 people showed up. Okay? Again, I've been a proponent of this and I'll continue to hammer this message home. If we don't get what we want, if our demands are not met, we need to have a strike. We need to have a workers' strike. And bear in mind, again, because of the plutocracy and the oligarchy that is the United States never locked down like many other countries in Europe. England locked down, France locked down, Germany locked down, Belgium locked down, Netherlands locked down, Italy locked down, Spain locked down, Portugal locked down. My friends in Bosnia, who I love dearly, they locked down. My friends in Croatia and Slovenia, they locked down. My cousin Jillian, who lives in Malta, my dear cousin, they locked down. Why did all these other countries around the world lock down? And why did the U.S. not lock down? Because if the U.S. had locked down, you would have seen, they knew what that would have done to the economy. That's why the U.S. never truly locked down. That's why the U.S. has more deaths from COVID-19 than any other country in the world. The United States never locked down. So again, if the United States never locked down and other countries did, shouldn't that give you an idea of how powerful a workers' strike would be across this country? Because again, if we didn't lock down because of a pandemic, and out of the different stimulus packages that we had, none of them involved getting health care for everybody. Remember that. None of them involved getting health care for everybody. None of them did. We should have shut this entire country down until we got health care for everybody. That is what should have happened. That should have happened during the CARES Act when everybody was getting $600 a week. And quite honestly, $600 a week, it still wasn't enough money to sustain people. Because again, $600 a week divided by a $40 work week works out to the ripe sum of $15 an hour. The same $15 an hour that Joe Biden and progressive members of the squad of the House of Representatives campaigned on, the same $15 that Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff campaigned on, and the same $15 that Kamala Harris said she wanted to pass, and that's the same $15 that never got passed. So what did we get in the latest stimulus package? The American Rescue Act. We ended up with $300 a week of extra unemployment insurance. $300 a week divided by 40 hours a week is $7.50 an hour, which is 25 cents more than the federal minimum wage. So if you think your country and your government cares about you, they don't. They don't. They don't. So what we need to do is not placate our leaders in government. We need to be antagonistic. We need to be recalcitrant. We need to be civilly disobedient. And the best way to do that is a workers' strike. We shut this country down until the leaders of our country bend to the will of us, the people, because we are their bosses. It is not the other way around.
Absolutely correct. I want to thank you for your time this evening. I kept you way longer than I think I should have, but I definitely want to connect so I can have you on future shows because I'm curious as what's going to happen after this march. Scream and shout enough for me. I wish I could. I want to be there so badly, but I just can't make it. But I want to be there so badly.
Well, you know what, Tracy, look, I mean, not every march is a big march. Not every march is going to be Los Angeles or Washington, D.C. or Seattle. Greensboro, North Carolina, they're having a car caravan. Seriously. And they just got involved last week. They're having a car caravan. So again, you're 48 hours, you're actually less than 48 hours out. You're about 33, 34 hours out. It doesn't have to be anything big. It could be you and 10 other people at a local church standing on a street corner saying Medicare for all. That's better than doing nothing. It's better than doing nothing. It was John F. Kennedy that once said, no one can do everything, but everyone can do something.
Absolutely. You're
okay?
Absolutely
And
correct.
We need people in the streets. We need boots on the ground. So again, you don't have to spend $15,000 renting all sorts of fancy sound equipment, getting all sorts of permits, and making sure that you have a bunch of 50 cases of bottled waters and all sorts of guest speakers to come and speak at your rally. We don't need all that. We just need people in the streets. So if you're in Indianapolis and you send it out to 10 or 15 of your friends, hey, look, we're going to go to this local church and have a demonstration at 11 o'clock on Saturday morning. That's good enough. That's better than nothing.
Absolutely. You are absolutely right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being my guest. Thank you 10 million times. And like I said, I definitely got to have you back because I want to know what happened. And yeah, you just gave me a whole bunch of ideas to work on. Thank you. I didn't expect that to happen, but that's okay.
No,
so
you know what? I hear that. I hear that from people when people talk to me. Tracy, they're like, "Damn, I didn't think about that." And again, where me and Sharif and a few of us, we've discussed the formal complaint with the United Nations. That is happening. And we're looking to potentially organize some sort of protest or some sort of vigil or march at United Nations headquarters next month. We're trying to make that happen and make that a reality because we do not want to lose the momentum of this movement. Okay?
Absolutely.
And again, I want to make sure everybody, that all of your viewers and your listeners of this podcast understand this. I and the thousands of people that are participating in these marches across the country and these demonstrations across the country, we are not here for the moment. We are here for the movement. And I'm going to say that again. We are not here for the moment. We are here for the movement. And the movement is the march for Medicare for all in the United States of America.
Have a fantastic evening, sir. Thank you for coming in. Have a great day. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks so much. Take care.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right. Absolutely. Bye-bye.
That was a great interview, and I'm glad we got that echo. So I'm going to quickly go through the comments. Joy wants to know, did you see what happened to Mondale today? I have no idea what happened. Joy, what happened? She's not responding yet. So, yes, we got the echoing thing. I had to put on my headphones, which I forgot to do. Oh, hi, Merle. I didn't even realize you were in here. I do, too. I really like this fire. He really brought it. I mean, he had me thinking about some things. Oh, okay. So she said Mondale got arrested for protesting. The Voters' Rights Act, or what was he protesting? Yeah. So, guys, normally this show is just 30 minutes. This is like an hour and 6 minutes, which means I've kept you all twice as long as I normally do. But this was a special circumstance that required it. Definitely, I'm going to link the March for Medicare website donation link. But remember, this will be available soon. Please share this video. If you don't do anything else, put this particular show on your social media sites. Thank you, everybody. I will see you all next Thursday for Thursdays with Tracy. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you for joining me. Bye-bye.